Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who is joining us from wherever you are. Thank you so much for being here today. This is our first International Mountain Day event for 2020, the year of biodiversity and why it matters for mountains. So we wanted to put this event together to highlight the importance of youth in mountains, what they're doing now, and what young people all over the world can do in the future. So it was important for us to have represented youth not only from all around the world, but also all across sectors. So we'll be hearing from young people working in mountains and photography, working in agrobiodiversity, and even in wildlife. So I just cannot wait to get started and hear from all of them. So let's jump right in. Our first speaker, Daphna, will give us an overview of why mountain biodiversity matters for the planet and what action is needed at various levels. So she has been working for the Global Mountain Biodiversity Assessment for the University of Bern since 2016. There, she coordinates a network of scientists and the development of research tools, facilitates inter- and transdisciplinary science on mountain biodiversity and sustainable development, leads communication and publication activities, and engages internationally with key stakeholders in the science and policy community. So, Devna, go ahead.
Dear participants, welcome also from my side, from the side of the Global Mountain Biodiversity Assessment, an international network that has been promoting mountain biodiversity science, conservation, and sustainable use for about 20 years now. Let me start my presentation with a short refresher on mountains and mountain biodiversity. Mountains are everywhere, we know that, but they're everywhere different, as shown with these few pictures of mountain ranges. Now, what all mountains, as different as they are, have in common is that they host an incredible species diversity. Mountains are actually home to half of the world's biodiversity hotspot, and also to about 30% of the world's key biodiversity areas of particular importance for biodiversity. Yet, mountain biodiversity is at risk. It is at risk from changes in climate, but in fact, a major driver of change in mountain biodiversity is land use change, as shown on this slide. Land use change acts on mountain biodiversity across all elevations, from above the tree line all the way down to the lowlands, the freshwater systems, and the agricultural systems. Now, what does it mean that drivers are acting on mountain biodiversity? Well, it means that species are migrating up the mountains to the mountain summits. New species are appearing and overtaking habitats, causing massive species renewal. But it also means that diseases are increasing, new diseases are appearing, and diseases appearing at increasing altitude, which in turn represent a major concern for people's livelihoods, as many mountain communities depend on crops for their livelihoods, and those crops are increasingly threatened by diseases. Now back to the basic question of why does it matter? Why does mountain biodiversity matter? Well, mountain biodiversity matters because it is actually at the heart of sustainable development. Those species that look a priori quite insignificant are actually critical to achieving the agenda formulated by the United Nations. Mountain biodiversity supports a very large number of nature's contributions to people, or so-called ecosystem services, which in turn are absolutely critical to achieve sustainable development. Now let me be a little bit more precise about that. This biodiversity, grasses, means food for people and feed for animals, which in turn is critical to achieving no poverty and zero hunger. Those plants are medicinal resources and thus important to achieving good health and well-being. Many mountain communities have no access to modern medication as we have here in Central Europe, but fully rely on species that are growing in their surroundings. Mountain forests, of course, are important. Trees are a source of energy, of affordable energy for many people, and thus critical to achieving SDG 7. And trees are also important for carbon sequestration and thus making progress towards climate action. This diversity of species in turn, again, looking quite insignificant, is absolutely key to stabilizing soils and thus to the regulation of hazards and achieving progress towards SDG 13. Now, mountains made it lately in a number of agendas, including Agenda 2030, with 2 mountain-specific targets. Mountain biodiversity is also important in the framework for biodiversity set out by the CBD, and there is ongoing effort for raising awareness about mountains and their biodiversity in the post-2020 framework process. There are also a number of international initiatives and networks that are campaigning constantly and working hard to improve our understanding of mountain biodiversity, to improve the conservation and sustainable use of mountain biodiversity. And here's a list of them for which you will also receive the direct links. Those are all networks to which you can participate, in which you can engage. So you the youth, what can you do for our mountains biodiversity? Well, start by feeling responsible for it. Start by changing your behavior and encouraging others to change their behavior. As scientists, share your knowledge and importantly, share your data. Share your data with the scientific community such that awareness is possible and good science is possible. As I said before, engage in and with global networks and initiatives. And as a speaker from the Global Mountain Biodiversity Assessment, I invite you to become ambassador of mountain biodiversity. Reach out to us and engage with us for the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity in the mountains you care for. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daphna, for that fascinating intervention. I think that really gave us a great starting point to jump off of. So next, we are going to have a little introduction by Yuka Makino. So Yuka is our Mountain Partnership Secretariat Coordinator and Team Leader of the Water and Mountains Unit. She has 26 years of operational experience in managing and developing programs in disaster and geohazard risk management, natural resources management, and climate change adaptation. Her experience spans between East Asia, South Asia, Eastern Europe, and Africa, with field postings in Nepal, Cambodia, Bangladesh, and Japan. And here's a fun fact, Yuka actually grew up in the Garhwal Himalayas in India. So please, Yuka, over to you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. That was a little long. But yes, I'm a Garhwali. For people who from India, you'll know Garhwali. So I'm a Garhwali, and so I'm very happy to be here. So first of all, I'd really like to welcome all of you I'm so happy that so many of you are actually interested in mountains and are friends of mountains. And I would like to welcome each one of you on behalf of the Mountain Partnership to this first event of the International Day of Mountains, which, as you all know, is on December 11th. For me and all of us, today is a very important day because each one of you here today are the leaders and agents that will bring to the forefront the importance of mountains and mountain people to the rest of the world. So you all are here, you're very important to this gathering. You will be the ones that will spread the message that 60 to 80%, can you believe it? 60 to 80% of our fresh water comes from mountains. That half the global biodiversity hotspots are in mountains. Yet, these are under threat, just as Daphne was talking about. The loss of mountain diversity is part of the global emergency where 1 million animal and plant species are under threat of extinction, the most in human history. Mountain ecosystems are very vulnerable to land use change and prone to natural hazards, just as the former speaker mentioned, which are aggravated by climate change. And we all know whatever happens upstream, even if it's 100 kilometers from here, 150, 200 kilometers from where you live, the consequences are felt downstream, which impacts all of our lives. We're here today so we can take urgent action together because we are stronger together. Our dynamic network can share experiences, solutions, and resources of mountains and their people. Last year's International Mountain Day was dedicated to youth. We saw young people around the world engage in myriad of activities. We had groups of volunteers working in the mountains of Switzerland. We had a high school exchange program between Japan and Kyrgyzstan to promote the cultivation of sea berry. We had an exciting group of students led by Western Colorado University, which created a network of 8 universities in 7 countries to share their mountain experiences. This year, we encourage you to document the amazing biodiversity in your mountains through social media and events. And please do send us your photos for the International Mountain Day photo contest that we just launched. Lindsay, who is the moderator, will send you a follow-up email after this meeting with information of how you can submit your photos to the International Mountain Day photo contest. Last year, we had a photo contest of all the foods around the world, and that was very exciting. You will be able to download from our website all the recipe cards and all the contributions of all the recipes from all over the world, which was very exciting. So remember, by using the hashtag Mountains Matter and joining the movement on social media, you can show your support for the mountains and make them go viral. It'll be so exciting if it goes viral. So our actions now, as Daphne mentioned, will determine the health of our mountains, not just for tomorrow, but forever. Today, I look forward to hearing how you are sparking change in your countries and your locations, and how then we can work together. So good luck on this meeting today, and I look forward to hearing all your talks. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuka, for these inspiring words. I am so excited, like I'm sure you all are, to hear from our young speakers. So quick reminder, we will have a questions and answers session at the end. So please do write your questions in the chat, directing them to a specific panelist, and we will answer as many as we can at the end. So first up to set the stage, we have Manjiri Gaikwad. She works as Sustainability and Community Tourism Manager with the Global Himalayan Expedition and Mountain Homestays, both Mountain Partnership members. She has been involved in homestay projects in Ladakh, Madhya Pradesh, and other tourism development projects in Northeast India, as well as research work with the World Bank. Manjiri is furthermore a trained mountaineer. So our question for you, Manjiri, is what role does biodiversity play in your mountain community and areas of work? And what are you doing to conserve this biodiversity? And how would it affect the livelihoods around where you are?
Thank you so much, Lindsay. It's a wonderful opportunity to be here with all the youth working so greatly on protecting our environment with their expertise. I would like to tell what we do at Global Himalayan Expeditions and Mountain Homestays. Um, Global Himalayan Expedition is involved in conducting impact expeditions, and we at Mountain Homestays we do tourism development. Our all the operations, as you said, are based out of in Ladakh, which is known as a cold desert. And when I say Ladakh, it is, I think most of us would know, it's a very fragile ecosystem. It is a place where up in the mountains, the most important resources are found, the most important glaciers where our water comes from, and also the very rare species like snow leopard is found, which these species like snow leopard that are very unique to the for this specific region where Ladakh, Tibet, and all these mountains, and they play a very important role to maintain a healthy life cycle that would be very much required of coexisting of all the animals, human, and everyone on the planet. So this is the kind of a background for Ladakh region, but at the same time, this region has been has played a very important role back in history. This was a place that was known as Silk Route. Everyone would know about it, and it was a pass that was connecting in Asia to European country and Eastern countries. So because of this particular significance, a lot of people back in the time migrated here and settled here. Over the period of time, of course, they realized the harshness of the terrain, and based on that, they eventually developed their own way of lifestyle. Everyone would know that if you have seen pictures of Ladakh, they live a very particular kind of lifestyle, very minimalistic kind of lifestyle. And there is one very brilliant concept in their culture, which is known as Jungwa. Jungwa means maintaining balance. And when these people live their life based on this particular concept, they maintain life, or they maintain balance between them, their existence in this particular region, and the nature around them. They maintain this balance quite very nicely, and that's how over these so many centuries they have been able to survive there. So this has been the background of the place. And if you go and interact with these people who have been like lived their life based on such a wonderful concept, uh, you would see them tracking snow leopard up in the mountains, just smelling the urine on the rocks and things like that. They are very much aware of the glaciers around them. They are very much aware of the plants and everything, whatever biodiversity is existing around them. So this is like a big asset that because of that, every like a lot of people who are interested in this landscape come and visit them, and that becomes like a very good contact for these people, and also a base for people to kind of earn extra income from tourism. So this when it comes to this kind of background, it is also important to note that because of these harsh conditions and because of these concepts like Junga, that they really maintain their own territory, it becomes very crucial to note that their dependency, their livelihood is only dependent on the agriculture that they do, and the agriculture in this kind of terrain is very limited. Whatever they grow, it is just self-sufficient for them. So having something very like a secondary income, having something that will just added income for them becomes very crucial. So that's how things happened in back in time. Until very recent year, this whole region was not really very explored, but suddenly it became like a place that everyone wanted to go. And these communities saw a lot of people coming and staying in their villages, coming and going on their mountains and going on treks and visiting their region. They like the concept that they're getting this extra added income. They really picked tourism as like a very nice concept that it is bringing some development, some additional income for them, but it also caused a lot of negative impact. All the tourism that was coming to the villages and the region was very conventional and without any consideration of fragile ecosystem that Ladakh is. And apparently it caused a very negative impact in the sense, in couple of years, there was a huge pile of waste up in the mountains that was actually not a place for humans to be in, but a lot of local people have left it just for the wildlife and just for the nature. But it turned into a pile of waste within no time. Eventually, it became like a home for feral dogs, and it also caused the feral dog the population of feral dogs increased so much that it started attacking the snow leopards. Nobody would ever imagine this kind of species would attack snow leopards. But this kind of huge level of changes happened in the region. So this was the history of the region. And when mountain homestays and global Himalayan came in picture, we were always aware of this historic background, this cultural background, and the region had the suffering of the region and people of the Ladakh had gone through. So there it was very important to understand the livelihood should be suggested in a way that would not cause them the loss of biodiversity, not cause them any harm to the people, to the region, and also to the on the wildlife, and also the most important resources like glaciers. So that's where the concept of tourism and the impact expedition and homestay development came in picture. That is purely based on, again, a concept like Junga, where it is bringing development to the region, but considering the natural resources. It is purely simply, in a way, you are bringing very nice, good, the required developments for the people, but you are not taking anything out of from villages or from that ecosystem. The this region has always been like the electricity, and the lack of electricity has always been a problem for these people. There was no electrification until very recent time. The electrification got done, but without taking any resources or any infrastructure built. It was the electrification concept was built in the local context. The homestay development, tourism, the livelihood development that was very much needed was brought to the community in the concept of homestay tourism development, where you are not building any new infrastructure, and you are not equipping the houses or infrastructure with very great amenities, but just building sufficient infrastructure that is just in that is in local capacity. The houses, the extra spaces in the villages that are turned into homestays, which are very comfortable and nice places for people to stay in. Whatever the extra demand that tourism demands, like added food resources and things like that for extra people coming in your village, that particular demand was catered by building greenhouses. So all these practices were put in place for the people, and basically the meaning when I say that these practices are put in place, we are basically talking about making people resilient. And this is the whole concept of tourism. When you build when you give livelihood opportunities to people, considering the resilience and considering the changes happening around us, you are basically giving them a livelihood opportunity that would sustain with them, that would not collapse at one point of time because of the pile of waste that is generated in just next to the village. So this has been the approach of tourism development in these remote villages. And that eventually caused like a great impact. I would just share in a minute that a lot of people we saw, the young generation of people, young generation of these villages, they who were very eager to move out of their village and start something on their own or do something different for the income generation. They now want to stay back in their village. They want to preserve their concepts like culture like Jungwa, and they want to build a resilient and very sustainable infrastructure for their own people.
Thank you so much.
This is from me.
Thank you very much, Manjiri, for that fascinating presentation. So now let's find out exactly what kind of biodiversity and wildlife you can find in the mountains from Toka Mosikidi. He is a master's student in zoology at the University of the Free State in South Africa, whose work focuses on wildlife monitoring in remote areas. His work documents the avian diversity of high altitude wetlands using passive acoustic monitoring. Toka is a nature fanatic who envisions himself as a future conservation biologist, contributing to the long-term sustainable management of South Africa's spectacular wildlife. So our question for you, Toka, is, in addition to scientific tools for wildlife conservation, what social tools or other approaches can we adopt to engage with local communities and non-scientific stakeholders whose help we need to safeguard nature in mountains? Please go ahead.
Should I answer the question first or should I continue the presentation?
Go ahead with the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. South Africa is particularly rich in terms of biodiversity. We have a wide range of species ranging from birds, amphibians, mammals, and many plants, of which most of the plants, 17% of the plants, are endemic to South African mountains. Next slide, please. South Africa's mountain wildlife is unique, but like in most countries, it is declining, as illustrated on those two maps. Some Africa's most critically endangered biological hotspots are in mountainous areas of South Africa, and conservation action is urgent. The decline in biological hotspots also affects other countries in Africa, such as Tanzania and Ethiopia. We need to understand the actual threats to our biodiversity and hotspots collectively. Next slide, please. Some of the main factors contributing to declines in mountain wildlife diversity includes the following: climate change with increasing temperatures and climatic extremes, such as droughts, lack of conservation intervention, lack of education, overexploitation, changes in land use and urbanization, also poaching and human-wildlife conflicts. There is a lot we as humans are doing, and there's a lot that we can do in order to prevent the losses of our biodiversity. Next slide, please. Human-wildlife conflicts in particular are a growing threat to African wildlife and an issue that has not been given enough attention. As shown here, these conflicts are not limited to elephants, such as in Botswana. Even the human-elephant conflicts are among the better studies examples. Here in South Africa, chacma baboons, for instance, invade people's properties, threaten human well-being, creating increasing conflicts between human and wildlife. As with elephants in Botswana, communities have built fences in order to avoid direct contact with these animals, but that was not good enough as a solution. As you see, there's an increase in killing of wildlife by threatened, scared, and angry people of the communities. Next slide, please. Communities react instead of acting prior to the problem. Human-wildlife conflict occurs when wild species causes direct or indirect negative effects on a group of people or community. These effects include damage to infrastructure, damaging of the crops, and endangering human and domestic animals' well-being. There are possible pathways though that we can take in order to try to coexist with the wildlife. This include passive means, indirect, when we indirectly using natural enemies or artificial enemies, or direct, which are hunting and shooting, which should be done under strict conservation policies. Common conservation grounds are not often too easy to reach in terms of human-wildlife conflicts. This is because they involve lots of money, they are time-consuming, and there are many different attitudes towards wildlife in communities. So for us to be able to solve this, we need to consider working towards understanding our wildlife at large. By so doing, we need to monitor our wildlife. Next slide, please. Monitoring wildlife is in fact important for various reasons. For example, it provides us with population estimates. It helps us understand activity patterns and habitat use. It helps us understand effects of human on wildlife. You'll see an example later on. Yet monitoring wildlife has its challenges, and we need to work towards mitigating those challenges. Next slide, please. Monitoring is particularly challenging in landscapes such as mountains, which are difficult to access, and it is often very time-consuming and costly. Yet new technologies such as camera traps, acoustic devices such as song meters, GPS collar trackers, conservation drones, and remote sensing offer great solutions. The use of such technologies makes monitoring much easier in remote areas. Next slide, please. Remote sensing, for instance, allows for the development of dynamic range of models of wildlife, animals, and species distribution models that are important tools for conservation as they inform where to expect individual species and also what areas to protect, for instance. Next slide, please. A practical example of incorporating current technology in monitoring the use of camera traps, which is what I did to study human influence on ungulates in a mountainous protected area. We found that occupancy and activity patterns of ungulates differed in areas of high human activity and those of low human activity. Next slide, please. As a take-home message, as youth, we need to take ecology and conservation to the next level and make it multi and transdisciplinary. We need to learn and adopt new novel methods and technologies such as artificial intelligence. We need to incorporate these new technologies with the traditional expertise in taxonomy, ecology, and conservation. We also need to start engaging and having regular meetings with scientists from different fields such as climatology and social sciences, and also engage with the stakeholders that are directly involved, such as the policymakers, the civil society, and other practitioners within our communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Satoka. That was great to have such an interesting overview on mountain wildlife. So since we know now that it's important to apply ecology and conservation also across sectors, let's hear from Eleonora De Falcis about how she applies it through business and agrobiodiversity. Eleonora is an agricultural economist working as a junior professional officer at the Biodiversity SIA Alliance based in Rome. She has experience in the areas of small and medium-sized enterprises and agri-food competitiveness, including international trade. Eleonora is currently working on the economic sustainability of various agrobiodiversity projects related to on-farm agrobiodiversity conservation, mainly in Asia and Africa. So, Eleonora, our question for you is, can you tell us more about your work, what the main challenges and opportunities of agrobiodiversity conservation are, and just give us some examples of business development strategies in this context? Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay, and thank you everyone for joining us. So my work at the Alliance focuses on business models that ensure economic sustainability of agrobiodiversity programs. And in particular, my work focuses on biodiversity conservation on farm. In our team at the Alliance, we work on how to use agrobiodiversity to build resilience, to support production and productivity. And I work on the economic part. So I do research and I support the project design on coupling agrobiodiversity conservation with economic sustainability. Since I joined the organization, I have been working on community-based organizations, and one of my experience is related to a project in the Himalaya region, which was funded by UNEP-JEP Fund. So the project worked on how to use agrobiodiversity for climate adaptation and working on, let's say, a whole round approach with action that ensured that farmers not only had access, but also used a wide variety of seeds that responded to the local needs and their local conditions. And one of the main elements of the project was indeed the establishment of a community-based organization, the Community Seed Bank. Very briefly, these are informal institutions which are governed by farmers within the community, where farmers can save their local seeds and also make them available to the local community when they need them. So community-based seed banks are very much at the center of the project. They ensure production and also agrobiodiversity conservation. We need to consider that particularly the poverty rate is usually higher in the mountain compared to the lowland, and also the formal seed sector mostly under-delivers or do not deliver the seeds that farmers would need to cope with the climate change, which is affecting everywhere, but in particular those areas. So institutions like the Community Seed Bank really act very much as a sort of insurance for farmers in the community and provide a safe place where they can store their seeds, they can have access to the seeds, control the quality of the seeds that farmers have access to, and also provide the diversity of the seeds that they need to cope with the climate change. And in my work at the Alliance, I look at the economic side side of these institutions and in general at the economic, agrobiodiversity conservation and economic sustainability. Economic sustainability is probably the most important challenge for agrobiodiversity conservation. For example, the community seed banks are very, very successful in terms of increasing the access, but also the diversity of seeds which farmers have access, but without clearly an economic incentive that sustains the reintroduction of a more, let's say, diverse agriculture, the risk in declining in the interest on agrobiodiversity conservation stays very high. So when we're talking about these institutions, community seed banks, we also need to consider that there needs to be an economic incentive that is for the institution itself and also for the farmers. An example on how to increase the economic sustainability for a community seed bank is the community seed bank fund model. This is a model where the community seed bank manages a small fund which offers loans exclusively to the members of the community and is accorded to farmers with a very advantageous interest rate and free of collateral. And the return from the credit is actually used to finance the cost, the administrative cost of the community seed bank. This is a very interesting model which was applied for the community seed banks in the project in the Himalayas and in many other community seed banks in Nepal, and can help to incentivize conservation and also create economic opportunities for farmers, for example, giving credit to farmers which may have limited or no access to credit. Still, I think that for a long-term economic sustainability, the participation to the value chain is clearly very important. And indeed, in this particular context, in mountains, challenges are, for example, related to transportation, but also limited production, which doesn't allow farmers to exploit the economies of scale, but also the lack of adapted technology, which is normally not developed for marginal areas or is not developed for crops which are not, let's say, on the mainstream of production. So some business development clearly need to embrace a multi-perspective approach, which looks at, for example, policy actions and in terms of access to infrastructure, but also subsidy can be also a possibility. And on the market side, organizational aspects like consolidation of the supply and in this sense, like institutions of cooperatives, but also increase functions along the value chain and also adopt certifications and labeling, for example, to meet the demand for organic products or for nutrition products.
Thank you so much. Oops.
No, yes, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Eleonora, for enlightening us on this very important aspect of biodiversity. So now we are taking a trip to the Andes. So let's begin with our first speaker from Colombia. Sara Casallas Ramirez works with the Forest and Water Program at FAO. She is an expert in global environmental policy and monitoring of water-related ecosystems with over 8 years of experience working with international organizations. Her interest in natural resource management has mostly focused on bridging science and policy to address issues hindering the implementation of policies at both national and local levels. So our question for you, Sara, is why does biodiversity matter for the forest and water interactions in mountains and in the lowlands? And what role can young people take in promoting awareness and informing policymakers? Please go ahead, Sara.
Thank you, Lindsay, and hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone participating in this wonderful event. And thank you to the Mountain Partnership for putting this together. It's amazing to be part of this. So going to the question, why does biodiversity matter for forest and water interactions in mountains and in the lowlands? So we know that biodiversity and ecosystems are interlinked. For example, forests provide critical ecosystems or critical habitats for biodiversity. Forests are also a huge part of the water cycle. We know that they are very important for providing water quantity and water quality. So a great example to show these linkages between water, forests, and biodiversity are forested watersheds. These watersheds are extremely important. They provide about 75% of the world's accessible fresh water. And they also supply water to 90% of the world's largest cities. So I would like to give an example that is very close to my heart to show these linkages. And this is the example of Bogota in Colombia, where I come from. So Bogota is the capital of Colombia, and it is located at around 2,600 above sea level. It is home to more than 8 million people. So it's almost a mega city. It's huge, counting the metropolitan area. And there are 3 forested watersheds that provide water to Bogota. However, 80% of the water comes from this one area called Chingaza. It is a national park, and given the importance of this area for water for the city, it was designated as a national park. So this area that provides 80% of the water to Bogota covers other headwaters of various watersheds that drain into some of the major basins in Latin America, as is the Magdalena River Basin and the Orinoco River Basin. So, and then this basins then, or these rivers then go all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, for example. So let's talk about biodiversity. Chingaza, the area that provides 80% of water to Bogota, is also home to 1,000 species of flora, around 500 species of fauna. 400 of the species are birds. So it's amazing when you go there and see the biodiversity and all the birds there. And many of them are endemic. So some of the ecosystems that we find there are paramos, high Indian forests, and cloud forests. What happens is that these forests, they act as sponges. So they take the water either from the rainfall or from the clouds, and then this water then goes into the rivers and then downstream, taking water to people in the lowlands. So these headwater forests are super important. And then they go into basins such as the Orinoco Basin. The areas surrounding Chingaza, these headwaters, are extremely fertile. So you can imagine the livelihoods of people depend on crops, and also now, I think increasingly, they depend on tourism. And this is very important because a few years ago, a lot of the communities were actually taking fauna and flora from the park to sell it. And now the same people, they became community leaders and they work in tourism, and they're the ones who actually guide tourists and school groups that go into the park. So this is huge. And also they're involved in all the restoration activities that are going on in the buffer zone of the park. So this area is extremely important. But it is also a culturally significant area because the wetlands and the lagoons in the park are very important for indigenous communities. They have a huge value in that sense. However, you would think that this is really far from the city, considering all those beautiful things I'm talking about, but it's actually only 60 kilometers away. So if you have a mega city right next to this, wonderful headwaters and forests and that have all this biodiversity, you can imagine that the threats are huge. So yes, you do have deforestation for agriculture. You do have a growing city. I think Bogota is expected to reach 10 to 12 million in the next few years. But we also have climate change. And this is a huge one, Because, for example, many of the species that you find in the paramo ecosystems that absorb the water and in the cloud forests, for example, they have very limited ranges to where they can live. So if we lose them, we lose the ability for these areas to suck up the water and to take it to the rivers and deliver it to the people. So if we lose these ecosystems and we lose all the biodiversity that they have, we're basically losing all the water for millions and millions of people. It's not just Bogota, it's all the surrounding areas as well. So we need to protect, and there is a huge effort right now to protect, restore, and support the wise use of these ecosystems, because otherwise we're not going to ensure their survival. So this is a great example of how biodiversity, water, forests, and as humans, how we're interlinked and why we need to work together to protect these ecosystems. And going into your second question about the role of youth in promoting awareness and informing policy, I think young people are extremely important. A few things. So the first one will be to start the conversation. I think in recent years, we have seen these huge movements, youth movements coming up, and they have a huge effect on policymakers. So we have a role to play in speaking up about the issues going on in our communities and also about the changes in our environment. So if you're in school or in university, you need to engage in the debate. And as one of the speakers also said, we need to lead by example. So we need to change our habits and provide examples of better practices of how to use resources wisely. And then young people can also use their experience and their knowledge when they go into the workforce or in academia, as Montekiri showed us. And then perhaps I'm a good example of this. Knowledge of these ecosystems can be very valuable when working in the environmental policy arena. So you understand firsthand what are the key issues, what are the socioeconomic issues that communities are facing. And you bring this into the workplace and the work that you do. So you're better able to advise. For example, in our case, we help governments to improve the management of their forests and water resources. From my experience, I think there is a lot of my personal background that goes into the work that we do. It's just almost like I started studying when I started going to the mountains. So another thing is that young people can also lead and be part of citizen science. This was also mentioned before, but this is huge. This is a growing field. And we need more young people to participate in citizen science because this actually informs policy. We need science-based policies. We need science-based management. So without this evidence, we can't promote better management. So we need young people to engage in citizen science and to lead it. And then young people should actually try and be part of the decision-making process. We are the ones who are going to inherit the management of our resources. So we need to be part of the conversation, even if it's just listening. I would suggest to actively participate in it. But yes, I think we need to be part of the conversation as much as possible. So I hope I answer your questions, Lindsay, and please go ahead.
You absolutely did. Thank you so much for that, Sarah, for really diving into water and the effects downstream and the cities near it, climate change and youth. I think it really, proved how important young people are. So thank you for that. Now our trip through the Andes continues, now going through Peru with Gustavo Valdivia. He is an anthropologist who has been ethnographically exploring the worlds emerging in the high Andes of Peru as climate change unfolds. His work is principally based in the Quelcaya, the largest tropical glacier on the planet. This project has led him to carry out long-term field work among indigenous alpaca herders, collaborate as a field assistant in 5 scientific expeditions, work as a field producer for the BBC documentary series Frozen Planet, and participate as a chapter scientist in the IPCC's 6th assessment report. In 2018, he joined Invisible Productions in Lima, Peru, to start producing environmental films. So, Gustavo, what possibilities does filmmaking offer us to engage with indigenous and local knowledge on biodiversity in the Andes? Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here, and it's an honor to be here with you. Thank you, Lindsay, for the question. I just wanted to start saying that I'm a big fan of the Mountain Partnership. I attended a course, a promo course before even considering going to grad school. And that experience had a huge impact in developing my current intellectual interests. If Rosa Laura is in the meeting, many think this course is possible. They are actually life-changing. I can guarantee that. I just wanted to mention a few things before that might be useful to create some context for what I'm going to say after. As Lindsay mentioned, my PhD research was centered on Andean glaciers and the people who depend on them and those who study them. I've worked very close to climate scientists and also indigenous people whose lives are affected by the effects of climate change. And from there, after that, I thought and understood that there was something missing in this, how we are telling stories, or how we are continuing this dialogue between what's happening and what we should do and what is possible to do or what we need to know. So I'm here as the co-director of a film I actually co-directed. It's a film called In Every Leaf of the Forest. There's a short teaser that Lindsay, I think, shared in the chat window. And also the full film is online. Just let me know if you want to have the link after. But this is a film about, I would say in a few words, the extraordinary things that local people are doing to confront the effects of global change in the Andean forests of Ecuador and Peru. So I just wanted to say three things about, or trying to respond to Lindsay's question, and trying to, that I will synthesize as saying, why do we need a film about biodiversity in the Andes to continue with this discussion we're already having here, right? So this film, for those who are interested, try to, the main idea behind this film was that we wanted to make a film that was accessible for both, let's say, elementary school kids and PhD students. Was that even possible? We were trying to make something that was had in its structure was accessible for different kind of publics that we wanted to engage with these discussions and that need to be engaged in these discussions about biodiversity in Andean forests. We wanted to face basically the problem that most of that it's already limited scientific findings about Andean forests are only available in scientific journals, or mostly available in scientific journals, and that also local knowledge and the demands, local demands, are also mostly, fortunately, excluded from these discussions. So we wanted, with the film, face that problem and show something that can help or at least contribute to move this debate in a different direction. Second, we wanted to put these extraordinary efforts that are being done by local people in the Andes, and I'm sure everywhere in the world, to confront the challenges of global change, and trying to make a film that puts their voices in the center of it, right? It's not, if you watch the film, it's not a film about, it's not a story told by scientists or scientists guiding us of what we have to see or understand. Of course, it's present, the scientific literature in there, but it's a film fully narrated that has two protagonists, two very common people from the Andes, but with that they have lots of things to tell us and share with us. That was also something we tried to do here. And the last thing that I think it's important, and I mean, if there are any others in this meeting that are interested in doing, combining their research methods with, let's say, I don't know, filming, sound, art, or other, let's say, more creative resources, I would say that something that is also important, and we try to do this, and you can watch the film to see if we how far we got with this idea, is that we want to include the forest ecosystem as an actor itself in the film. So if you watch the film, if you have, I recommend you to use headphones or perfect speakers, because you can see there, or at least we want you to. We try to use the tools of experimental filmmaking to create an immersive experience with the Andean forest, and this is also there if you want to experience that. I recommend you to watch the film and try to. I mean, if you have any feedbacks or any ideas after that. But I guess more than getting feedback about our films, I wanted to share with you the idea that it is important to bring those stories also back into our discussions, right? Stories from ordinary people that normally are not, their voices are not necessarily, that their voices are not necessarily being part of our ongoing discussions, or that they're not research in these areas, right? And I think that's very, very important. I know, at least for the Andean world, that it's a word I know a bit about. And there's lots of things we can get from that. Biodiversity, conservation efforts, biodiversity restoration efforts are also, there are lots of stories out there to bring into our discussions that can also, not only as a matter of environmental justice, but also for even scientific interest that we should bring back into our discussions. And this film is an effort or a contribution we expect to that project.
Thank you so much, Gustavo. These films sound absolutely amazing, and I definitely encourage everyone to watch the trailer that is in the chat. So next, we are going to a totally different continent of mountains. We're going to hear from Jake Birchmore, who is a mountain lover, photographer, and filmmaker, born and raised in the San Juan Mountains of Telluride, Colorado. He aims to create awareness about the critical issues encompassing mountain communities through passionate storytelling and enthralling visuals. Jake earned his bachelor's degree in environment and sustainability from Western Colorado University, which is actually a Mountain Partnership member as well. So Jake, in the age of social media, what can creators do to preserve mountain biodiversity and help #MountainsMatter go viral?
Yes, hi. Can everyone see me and hear me? Is that okay? Great. First of all, thank you so much for being here today and taking the time to listen to my presentation. And it was so great hearing from other inspiring presenters today. And so I'm currently based in Bozeman, Montana, but have been living in Crested Butte, Colorado, and going to Western Colorado University, which is how I got involved with the UNMP. And to answer the question, in the age of social media, what can creators and artists do to preserve mountain biodiversity and help make Mountains Matter go viral is pretty complex, but simply, I think that collaboration, mindfulness, and driven storytelling to help communicate science in a way that is understood by the general public is kind of my basic answer to that. But also, through creative storytelling, we can inspire youth and all ages to really promote Mountains Matter in a way that shows mountain biodiversity as a beacon of hope, and preserving that through sharing on social media and bringing about some of these interesting stories through posting to your story, even posting to your feed, sharing some IGTV videos. Just everybody has a cell phone these days. Everybody has a camera. How can we use that in a way that is responsible to put nature first instead of taking away from nature when you're taking a photograph? And how can we collaborate together and instead of competing to create better photos, better visuals? How can we really just come together and create things that will inspire people to take action? Because ultimately, policymakers and scientists, engineers, decision makers, they're going to be the ones really making the big changes. And how can artists, we may feel so small in the big world of social media, but how can artists and creatives continue to push action through their storytelling and their photographs? So that's or several examples of what I continue to thrive for in my work when I'm creating and getting out into the field, is how can I be respectful to the environment and the biodiversity, but also focus on how can I share the stories instead of holding them back? How can we continue to share and inspire people? So that's my answer to the question of how can we as creatives preserve mountain biodiversity.
Thank you so much, Jake. I think you really covered everything and helped us realize how incredibly important social media is as a tool. There's such great platforms that are free and available for everyone, and you really can make a difference. So we do encourage you to use the Mountains Matter hashtag. So now for our last speaker, absolutely not least, we have Giovanni. Giovanni has a PhD in electronic engineering. He is a mountain athlete and eco-activist. He's also a father and husband, passionate about permaculture and living a simple lifestyle. In January, he actually crossed the Alps by ski with 3 friends to protest fossil fuels at the World Economic Forum. So our question for you, Giovanni, is how have you witnessed climate change affecting mountains in your lifetime? And what action is needed to protect these fragile mountain ecosystems and the people who depend on them? Go ahead, Giovanni.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jake, for the nice insights. I really appreciate them. I think that activism works and social media sharing works. So that's what I will speak about in the next few slides, trying to answer Lindsay's question. Montagnani, that's my name, says that in my genes there are mountains, so I'm really into this topic, you know. And please go next. I living nearby the Alps. I enjoy Alps in every season. In the winter, like you see now. Next. This is my lake, Lago Maggiore, and I'm skiing in the mountains nearby the lake, as you can see from this picture. Go next. We have beautiful mountains to climb in the summer. Next. And mountains to run into, and that's beautiful, and that's totally no infrastructure needed to do all these things. Go next. And this is Switzerland. It's perfect for running, skiing, living the mountains, and that's an environment where people live in synergy with the mountains, with beautiful respect. And it's known in every part of the world for this reason. Go next. And this is what we can see also in these mountains, climate change. This is the effect of Vaya. It's a storm that hit Dolomites in 2018. It destroyed 14 million trees in just 1 hour or something similar to that. So that's climate change, and that's not only melting glaciers. The problem is also extreme events, and it's like 2 billion euros damage in a couple of hours, and that's incredible. And this is another kind of destruction happening in the Alps, is tourism infrastructure, unsustainable tourism infrastructure, and it's a public funded stuff. So you see this stuff covering the Alps, and this you can find it almost everywhere in the Alps. Go next. And this is what Olympic Games are affecting the Dolomites. And it's another kind of topic very similar to climate change, because it's funded, almost public funded, like fossil fuels, but it's a different industry, but the effects are very similar in terms of damage to the environment and to the mountains itself. Go next. And you can see here in the middle of the photo, like a scarce slope of ski piste go all around the mountains, and they're affecting more and more the new part of the mountains because of climate change. The pistes are going up in the mountains, and new infrastructure is needed. So it's a very huge problem in the Alps. Go next. So my question is what we are leaving to our children, because in 20 years of going in the mountains, I've seen a lot of change, dramatic change, and this is my child, Nora, my first child, and we are leaving to them something that is totally downgraded from a paradise to an exploited place, and that's not fair for me, from me. So go on. And that's my vegetable garden near my house. I live in the mountains, and that's a place where you can profit from the country, from the place we live. There are a lot of economic activities like pastures, like food production, and that's something that doesn't require any big infrastructure, and it supports life from people living this. Also in an advanced country like Italy, that's possible, and people is making a living wage from this environment. They cut grass, they sell grass, they pasture cows, and I actually eat what is in my vegetable garden all the year, and that's incredible possible. And so go next. But these are simple things that I'm saying, but we need also to advocate for a bigger change in the investments, and that's why we decided to start in Chiesa Valmalenco and go to Davos this winter to protest against who is funding the unsustainability of fossil fuels, unsustainable tourism, and all the issue we are talking about. So go on. We really crossed the Alps in the Switzerland, and it was an amazing journey. And I really agree with spoke before me. We need to create also a narrative about action, not just the motivation for action. So we just have to tell a story, and we crossed the Alp to tell a story. And it was 3 days of action, of friendship, and that's an amazing journey. And to me, it tells me go on with this mindset. We crossed the Alps in winter, so a lot of hours per day were by night, and it was an incredible journey. Go on. You see in my this is me, and in my in the back there is some disappearing glacier that every year we see. We go in these places, and we see a very fast change that tells me that we don't need anymore talking within the a deep action from the political level and from the individual level. And from us that are we already concerned, we need to step up action and raise the voice. So this fast change brings me a lot of motivation, and we will not stop there. This is us arriving at Davos at midnight, and we support Extinction Rebellion Group, and this is the sum of everything. Act as if the truth was real. We see 100% change in biodiversity in the first slide, and that's tell us the huge and the demanding scenario that we will face, and we are just in the beginning right now. So go on. And that's I with my activism, I have to say I have managed to convince at least 2 people. And these are my friends, Luca and Anne. They were a frequent traveler. They went all around the globe, and now they are starting a very sustainable way to approach mountains instead of going all around with planes, with fast tourism. Today they just start from their home, and they went all around the Alps by walking, by enjoying the country, and that's like a very change in the mindset that is required to face our next time that we will face. So go on. And that's a camp I managed to organize with before COVID restriction that are currently happening in Italy. And so you see we are quite a distance, and we were kind of 40, 50 activists, and we were joining them, enjoying also the mountain view and the mountain place where we camped, to share this enthusiasm about activism, about the need of spreading the voice. So that's to me what we have to do. So focus on our habits, so gain more sustainable habits, but also to advocate for effort for everyone, and to create this narrative of we have to act. Act is nice, acting is fun, and we have very much to gain for this action. So before to finish, I want to share you some couple of videos we filmed. So the first is Alpe Cascinone, is a place where I dream why this is an abandoned place. You know, it's very go on, play it. I don't see it playing, but anyone, it's kind of stopped. Anyway, and the other, maybe you can try to play the other, is our lake in the winter, and that's some kind of paradise scenario in our Alps, without any kind of big infrastructure welcoming tourists. So it's open to join and to participate this incredible scenario, to everyone that want to go there and enjoy it. But anyway, I don't see the video, so I guess that it was impossible. So thank you everyone for this incredible occasion to meet each other, and I hope that it will be not the last occasion. And
thank you so much, Giovanni. Sorry about the videos. We are unfortunately out of time, but yeah. Your presentation was amazing, and I think it really inspired us to take some action on a small scale, which makes a big difference. So that is the end of our youth panel, and now we are going to hear from Dr. Pradeep. To give us an insight into the role of biodiversity in the Himalayas and also with youth. He is an expert on forestry issues and has worked extensively in the Indian Himalaya region, undertaking collaborative research on biodiversity and ecosystem services, as well as development projects at the community level. He is the chairman of the Central Himalayan Institute for Nature and Applied Research, or CHINAR, a member of the Mountain Partnership, and is committed to the sustainable mountain development and livelihoods of mountain communities. So please go ahead, Pradeep.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. And sorry for being late. The network didn't allow me. Maybe it was not taking me as a youth, so I have to change my name. So I have to use another ID. So yeah, so coming to the voices from the Himalaya, I'll be talking about some of the examples, what's happening in the Himalaya. Next slide, please. So biodiversity, it's not only about flora and fauna. Biodiversity is also about diversity of ecosystems. And when we talk about, evaluating an ecosystem, we have to see the different kind of ecosystem services that an ecosystem provides us. The direct benefits like the provisioning, the supporting services, the regulating services, and all the other services. And biodiversity is the foundation of all the services. If we don't have biodiversity, we will not have all these ecosystem services. At the same time, biodiversity is also resilience to pests, diseases, and climate change. And when we talk about the Indian Himalaya, species, and out of this, almost 3,100 are endemic, which are found only in the Himalayas. So if we lose these species, we are not going to find them anywhere else. So this is the natural habitat of these species. At the same time, there are more than 30,000 of the faunal species, and the region is also known for the diversity of the ethnic groups which are found in the Himalayas. Next, please. So biodiversity for others, people living in the plains, it is just aesthetic value, but for the mountain people, it is the livelihoods of the people. If we say it provides us food, if we just see the diversity of the top left picture, it is the kidney beans diversity, which I collected last year from one region. There are 15 species just from one region. So you can imagine the diversity of the food species we have. Then we are dependent upon the forest for fodder, for manure. There are edible mushrooms like the Gucci mushroom, also known as morel. Then for fuel wood also we are dependent. Then see the picture on the left in the middle. The golden color Some of you may be knowing it. It is called as the biological gold. It is a caterpillar which is infected by a fungus. It is a medicinal plant. Why is it known as the biological gold? Because the per gram value of this caterpillar is $100. So you can imagine 1 kg cost 100,000. So that's the kind of diversity it has. It is bringing us economy to the people. Next slide, please. So every species on this earth is important. Every species is linked to each other. So they provide us different ecosystem services. So we can't ignore biodiversity. So every species is important. Next, please. So just sharing few examples of the importance of some of these species. So here are the two species which resemble in their color, which resemble in the stripes as well. And both have an important role in the ecosystem. If we just see the bees, so the bees, they provide us honey, definitely the provisioning service, but they also support by providing supporting service like pollination, and they regulate the food production. So they regulate our food. Next slide. So 98 of main food crops are pollinated by out of the 108 crops are pollinated by bees. So if we lose bees, Einstein has said that the earth will disappear within 4 years. So the humans will disappear from the earth will be here, but humans will disappear. Next, please. So same is with the tiger. So the tiger maintains the forest ecosystem. If the bigger carnivores are not there, there will be more herbivores, and the forest will deplete, and the regulating service of forest, which they regulate in the form of water, it will lose. So for these tiger, they control the forest ecosystem, which leads to water security. So this is the importance of each species. Next, please. So despite having all these benefits, there are problems of habitat destruction, problems of climate change, road construction, fire. Every year there are thousands of hectares of forest in the mountains, in the Indian Himalayas, which just vanish because of fires. Urbanization, small villages are turning into small towns, towns are converting into cities. And then there are other anthropogenic pressures as well. Next. So if we take some of the examples, in some of the valleys in the Himalayas, the commercial agriculture like apples and kiwi are replacing the farm biodiversity. The finger millets, the red rice. In Himachal, this is happening. In some parts of Uttarakhand also, this is happening. So these were the staple food of the people. But now, due to these replacement, these crops are not available. So these people are dependent on the neighboring state from where they import it. And the cost of this red rice has gone up to 200 Indian rupees or more than 3 euros. So this is how it is impacting. And at the same time, next, it is also making agriculture more vulnerable to climate change. Imagine if there is hailstorm at the time of flowering, when pollination, then the entire crop of the farmer is gone. And when they grow monocrops and they spray lots of fertilizer, insecticides, fertilizer, pesticides, the bee population is declining. Here on the right, you can see the traditional beekeepers in the log wood hives. They keep these honeybees, and the honeybees provide the pollination services. They regulate our food, but at the same time, these are declining. We did a survey in Himachal, and in one of the villages, out of 40 families, only 2 were having active beehives. So the other 38 hives had, in the families, they had just vanished because of monocropping and the use of insecticide and pesticide. Next, please. And the impact of climate change. Now, in some of the valleys, now you can't grow apples. In Kullu, apples are replaced by pomegranate, kiwi, and peach. And apple belt has shifted further 60 kilometers to the north. And at the same time, the species are shifting to the north. It's in flora, if you say the cheer pine is taking over the broadleaf forest. And some of these species, this is a newspaper cutting of 11th of October last week. And it says that the the moths and the butterflies are further shifting to the north where they were never found before. More than 4,800 meters where they are now found. Next, please. So what some of the initiatives that we have taken. So even after, going for an iPromo program of Mountain Partnership, lots of ideas came, lots of networking happened. And then we started recently this Citizen Science Forum on the right top. If you see, this is a Citizen Science Forum for the Himalayas, where more than 500 people have joined, and the themes are related to biodiversity. People are contributing. We are just monitoring. We are also doing Nature Connect programs for the children, for the schools. And here in the lower left, if you see, here is a document that we worked for FAO, indigenous people and indigenous food profiling system we did in the Himalayas. At the same time, we have started these responsible rural tourism, where people come, they eat the local food. So that's also how the local biodiversity, the farm biodiversity is being restored. At the same time, they go out in the nature to know about the flora and the fauna of these species. We are also promoting biodiversity in our International Mountain Day program, which we have been organizing since 2017. This picture you all must have seen. It was last year's poster of IMD. And this was the program that we did. We are doing all biodiversity activities over there, competition with the villages. Next, please. And as a youth, now the youth can play an important role in advocacy, influencing policies. You can do research related to biodiversity conservation, and you can actually work in development projects. So that's, you are the flag bearers of the mountains. And next, and the last slide. And as with it is said that community is the essential ingredient in growth and development. And together as a global mountain community, I think we will definitely maintain this fragile ecosystem of the mountains and for a longer sustainability. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Pradeep. That was an amazing, quick, and very informative and interesting presentation. Thank you again. So before we move on to the question and answer session, I would like to welcome Yuka Makino back to the floor to briefly summarize what we have heard.
Okay, this is going to be very difficult to summarize. It'll be very, very brief and very quick. So I have put together, well, the team has put together one-sentence summaries of all the things. I think we first heard that biodiversity is foundation for sustainable development, and we, all of us here, are responsible for conservation, and we're the ones who influence the land use change in our countries. And we need to reach out and collect and share data. Manjiri said sustainable tourism can act as a healthy solution to generating livelihoods in fragile ecosystems without negatively impacting local biodiversity. Moskidi Toka said, youth need to take ecology and conservation to the next level. Eleonora said, government action and market participation can provide conservation of agrobiodiversity through economic incentives. Sarah Juliana said, protecting biodiversity in mountains and people, and the people that depend on it. Sorry, am I saying this right? To protect biodiversity in mountain regions and the people that depend on it, we need to protect, restore, and widely use the ecosystems that support it. Young people need to be part of that citizen science. We all need to be involved. Gustavo said the voices and stories of indigenous people and local knowledge need to be heard. Jake said influencers and social media users should collaborate for conservation, inspiring people to respect nature and not destroy healthy ecosystems by making them go viral. Then Giovanni said, we need to create a narrative for action, tell a story of the mountains. So basically what everyone was saying is we need to let us take our responsibility of our future together. Was that a good summary?
I think it was a great summary. Very quick, thank you so much, Yuka. So our first question is for Toka. And this one is from Yvonne saying, I would like to get more details about the use of natural enemies. Do you have any success stories about that method?
So far, we haven't had really solid or robust stories regarding the use of natural enemies in our region, but they are more based on cultural beliefs and more of myths surrounding the animals that are in charge. So in our area, you'll find that many people say they've used, they introduced more snakes into their gardens in order to deter the baboons and stuff, which is not more scientifically proven. But those that have done so, they have give us positive outputs, but which we cannot just confirm to them and say this is true, it works, without scientifically proving it. And then it is also seen in most cases when it is more of small pests trying to invade your gardens and stuff. That's where you introduce the natural enemies. Those are the more of the stories where there was success. Thank you.
Thank you, Toka. We actually have another quick question for you. Could you share what mitigation measures you are following in Africa to overcome human-wildlife conflict, as the frequency and dimension of conflicts differ with the species?
The human-wildlife conflict in Africa differs with each species involved, and each and every case is different. It's a sensitive case depending on the community that is involved and the attitudes from the local people. But the most common way to mitigate is to start giving more frequent awareness to school level children, and also start campaigns that involve community people, and we teach them more about the conservation, and we also introduce them to more careers within conservation and ecology. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for those brief and informative answers. So our next question is for Sara, asking, Chingaza Natural Park is a protected area. So can you explain if there's any kind of access limitations to people to the area, or is it free?
So there are limitations actually. There is a zone map, areas where you can go in, areas for strict conservation. But one of the key things that's happening right now is that the park is opening up to people. So you often see schools going in, and they actually have a trail for wheelchair access, for example. And that's amazing, because that means that anyone can go and visit and learn about this. So it is restricted. Each trail has a number of people that can go in per day. So you have to sign up and get insurance and everything. But it's really good. And I think the way they're managing it it's excellent.
Great, thank you so much, Sara. So unfortunately, we only have time for one more question. So the last question is for Pradeep from Amba. So what are the main challenges of youth in the Himalayas regarding loss of mountain biodiversity, and what is the way forward in your opinion?
Well, one of the more, challenge, especially in the mountains when it comes to youth, is the migration of the youth, because we don't have many livelihood options in the Himalayas. So most of the youth, they migrate, and it is the older generation which is there in the mountains. And the way forward is how we can, stop the migration or invite reverse migration. So one of the ways is, like investing on agriculture, value addition, enterprise development, horticulture, which has been there, it can be promoted. And at the same time, tourism has great prospect where we are working. Then skill development center where the youth can be trained, and they can be engaged in these hotel industry, tourism industry, or they can start up something of their own. So these are some of the the prospects in the mountains.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So apologies for having gone a bit late, but that concludes our session today. Thank you everyone so much for being a part of this. I know some of you did not have your questions answered. My apologies there, but I do encourage you to, both to the panelists and to our audience, to continue this conversation on our Facebook group. It's called Youth for Mountains. I'm putting it in the chat now. So both panelists and viewers today can join the group and continue the conversation there. I absolutely recommend it. So make sure to get involved on social media by taking part in our International Mountain Day photo contest. Samantha, if you could put that link in the chat, that would be great. Use the Mountains Matter hashtag on your posts and social media so we can make mountains go viral. And we also encourage you to have your own events for International Mountain Day like this one. You can send us an email about that and we can help you with some things there. And one more thing is that we will be sending everyone a resource package as a follow-up email. So the presentations, some more information, links to what you can do and take action for mountains will be following. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here, and we hope to see you at our next event. Thank you.